This photograph was taken in 1884. A mother and father sit side by side in a cramped Victorian parlor, the father in a dark suit, hands resting on his knees, the mother in black, a brooch at her throat, her face rigid with the effort of not collapsing. Around them stand 6 children, 3 boys, 3 girls. They are arranged by height, the way families like to do. The youngest near the front, the eldest at the back. One leans against his father's shoulder. Another rests a hand on her mother's arm. A little girl in a white dress sits on a low stool between her parents' feet, head tilted just so. To anyone glancing at it in a dusty album, it looks like a perfectly ordinary 19th century family portrait. Formal, unsmiling, stiff. Until you look closely. The boy at the father's shoulder is being held upright by an arm that is not his father's. A white-gloved hand, just visible behind his waist, supports him in place. His head lolls a fraction to one side, and his eyelids are heavy, too heavy. The girl with her hand on her mother's arm has a strange flatness around the mouth, as if the line between her lips has been drawn in afterwards with a pencil. The little one on the stool is listing slightly. Something hidden under her dress props her. The parents' faces are not simply solemn. They are annihilated. This is not a family getting ready to move forward into the future. This is a family saying goodbye to all of its futures at once. Because when this portrait was taken, every single one of those children was already dead. All 6. Taken by typhoid in the space of 2 weeks. The photograph was staged as a final family reunion, a last impossible attempt to have what disease had snatched away. One picture where everyone was present. Welcome to Veins of Darkness. To understand how this could happen, not just the disease, but the decision, we have to go back to a grim summer in Victorian England. The year is 1884. The town is one of those industrial satellites that ring the larger cities. Rows of terraced brick houses, a church tower, a gasworks by the canal. We'll call it St. Jude's, after the parish whose registers still bear the scars of that season. In June, the local paper runs a notice: outbreak of fever in the lower quarter. Several families on a single street, it says, have lost children to enteric fever, what we would now call typhoid. The cause is simple and brutal: sewage leaking into a cracked water main. In the lower, poorer streets, where wells have been filled in and people trust the new piped water, every pot of tea, every bowl of gruel, every washed spoon carries the bacteria straight into their bodies. Victorian medicine can describe the symptoms: fever, abdominal pain, the characteristic rose spots on the skin, but has little to offer beyond rest, broths, and hope. In one of those houses, at number 14 Mill Lane, live the Harpers. John Harper, 38, is a foreman at a nearby textile mill. Respectable, moderately paid, ambitious in the quiet way of men who read the paper at supper and dream of moving one street uphill. His wife, Elizabeth, 35, takes in sewing. She is recorded in the 1881 census as dressmaker as well as wife. Together they have 6 children. Thomas, the eldest, is 14. He's already part-time at the mill, carrying bobbins and sweeping floors. Mary is 12, serious and bookish. Edwin, 10, has a reputation on the street for climbing things he shouldn't. Ellen is 8, suddenly shy around strangers. Samuel, 5, is the one with the perpetual runny nose and grubby cuffs. and little Clara, 3, is the shadow that follows Elizabeth from room to room, clinging to her skirt. In July of 1884, typhoid comes to Mill Lane. The parish death register tells the bare facts in black ink. Clara Harper, aged 3, daughter of John Harper, foreman. Date of death, July 11th. Cause of enteric fever. Duration, 8 days. Within a week, 5 more lines follow. Samuel Harper, age 5, July 14th. Ellen Harper, age 8, July 16th. Edwin Harper, age 10, July 18th. Mary Harper, age 12, July 21st. Thomas Harper, aged 14, July 23rd. The dates fall like dominoes. 8 days between Clara's first fever and the parish clerk's last exhausted flourish of enteric fever under Thomas's name. 6 children gone in 2 weeks. The doctor, overworked, riding from house to house, notes the same story in each case: high fevers, delirium, the slow slide into stupor. He later admits, in a report to the sanitary committee, that once the disease had taken hold in that house, there was little hope for any of the young Harpers. We can fill in the gaps only by inference. The washing left unwashed, the sewing machine fallen silent, the beds stripped and remade and stripped again, the smell of carbolic soap mixing with the sweeter, sicker smells of illness. There is one small human detail recorded in a marginal note. On Clara's line, the vicar has written, "The mother bore herself bravely, though much exhausted." On Thomas's, 11 days later, the ink is blotched, as if the nib stuck in the paper. Normally, in a case like this, burials would follow quickly, as they did with individual deaths. The cemetery records for St. Jude's show that the gravediggers were busy that month, but the Harper's children are different. Clara and Samuel are buried together on July 15th. The next 4, Ellen, Edwin, Mary, and Thomas, are not committed to the ground until July 25th. 4 small coffins, 1 row. For nearly a week, those bodies remain in the house. A week in high summer. A week when the doctor, the vicar, and the sanitary inspector all visit more than once, urging John to make proper arrangements. Why the delay? Some of it is practical. Funerals cost money, even for children. Coffins, hearse, mourning bands, all add up. To bury 4 children on the same day might have been, in a grim way, more affordable than staging a separate ceremony for each one. But there is another layer, revealed only when a photographer's name appears in the studio ledger for that month. July 23rd, Harper family, special group, 6 children, parents. Note, 4 p.m. The name at the top of that daybook is T. Pritchard, photographic artist. His studio is on the High Street, 2 streets and a world away from Mill Lane. In the late 19th century, family portraits are prized. Working-class families might save for years to afford a single sitting. The Harpers, like many, likely never took all 6 children to a studio while they were alive. That chance is gone. But post-mortem photography has already taken its place in the cultural toolkit of grief. Parents bring dead infants to studios in their best clothes, cradling them as if asleep. Photographers come to houses, arranging bodies in cots or on chairs. The point is not to hide death, but to soften it. The Harpers ask for something more ambitious. A family group with all 6 children. Parents and offspring together, one last time. A final family reunion, as the assistant will write on the back of a sapple print. Pritchard, the photographer, knows this will not be simple. His notes, preserved with his estate, describe arriving at 14 Mill Lane on a hot afternoon. The blinds are drawn, bowls of disinfectant sit in corners. Neighbors hover in doorways, pretending to sweep, trying to see. In the front room, 4 small bodies are laid out: Ellen, Edwin, Mary, and Thomas. 2 more coffins, smaller, have already been nailed shut and brought back from the cemetery for the occasion: Clara and Samuel, exhumed temporarily at the family's insistence. It's a detail the parish records don't mention. It appears only in a later complaint to the local Board of Health, where the inspector fumes about the highly objectionable practice of exhuming the remains of the younger Harpers for purposes of a photograph. Pritchard gets to work. He has done post-mortem portraits before: an infant alone on a cushion, a child in a parent's arms, but never 6. He clears as much space as the narrow parlor allows. Furniture is pushed back against the walls. A plain drape is hung where the patterned wallpaper is too distracting. He brings in chairs, a straight-backed one for John, a slightly cushioned one for Elizabeth. He places them side by side, leaving room between for a small stool. The children are dressed in their best, or what can be made to look like best under the circumstances. The girls in white or light dresses, the boys in shirts and small jackets, hair combed. The parents insist that the children must look as if they were up again, not laid out, not shrouded, but upright, part of the family. So Pritchard and his assistant do what Victorian photographers have learned to do well. They cheat. Thomas, the eldest, is propped in a standing position behind his father, his back against a slender iron support brought from the studio, hidden under his jacket. An attendant, perhaps a neighbor pressed into service, stands just out of frame, one gloved hand on his shoulder, steadying him. The hand will be only barely visible in the final print. Mary stands on the other side, one hand resting on her mother's chair. Inside the sleeve of her dress, a length of wire keeps her elbow bent, in a plausible gesture. Edwin and Ellen are placed between their parents and the elder children, their small bodies balanced carefully against the adult's arms. Samuel and Clara, the littlest, are the easiest to pose. Clara sits on the stool, her legs hanging straight. Her body is light enough that a cushion behind her and a subtle tilt of her dress are enough to disguise the lack of muscle tone. Samuel is placed on his mother's lap for one exposure, on his father's for another. All the while, the room is heavy with the smell of carbolic and something sweeter, rotting, that no amount of scrubbing has removed. Elizabeth sits stone still, her eyes fixed on the camera, because if she looks down at the child in her lap, she will have to face what they are doing. John's jaws clenched so tightly it distorts his lip. At Pritchard's quiet instruction, they hold. The exposure is long by our standards, several seconds. Long enough for a living child to sway, to blur, to scratch an itch. The Harpers do not move. Their children cannot. The resulting image, the one we began with, will, at first, be exchanged privately. One print for the parents, perhaps one for each set of grandparents if they can bear to look at it. It will sit on the mantel for a time, then be moved to a drawer. It will travel, years later, to a tin box in an attic. When the last of the Harpers dies, a house clearer will bundle it with a stack of other photographs and sell it as part of a lot to a dealer. Decades after that, it will be bought blind at auction by a collector of Victorian ephemera who will assume it is simply an unusually large family. Only when he scans it, magnifies it, and cross-references the inscription on the back, Harper family, 1884, all together in an elderly hand, with parish records, will the full weight of it land. All 6 gone before the shutter clicked. The typhoid outbreak on Mill Lane subsides by autumn. The cracked pipe is repaired. The sanitary committee issues a report full of stern language about drainage and the importance of boiling water. The town moves on to the next worry: wages, winter coal, rumors of layoffs. John and Elizabeth do not move on so easily. The 1891 census shows them still at 14 Mill Lane. No children, no lodgers. Next to Elizabeth's name, in the column for Children Born Alive, Children Still Living, a category added that year, the enumerator has written 6/0. It is a bald little fraction of grief. There are, in the years that follow, notes in the parish magazine that suggest Elizabeth becomes active in charitable work for the sick. She helps nurse other people's children through fevers. She lobbies, quietly, for cleaner wells, for better drainage, for attention to the lower streets. John appears less. A fellow foreman remembers him as a man who had all the noise taken out of him. As for the photograph, it takes on a life and a weight of its own. In some Victorian households, displaying post-mortem photographs was normal. A child's likeness might be framed on the wall, surrounded by locks of hair and memorial cards. But the Harper portrait is something else. It is not a portrait of the dead. It is a portrait of the dead pretending to be alive beside the living pretending not to know. From a modern distance, it is tempting to see it as grotesque, even monstrous. Exhumed coffins, propped children, a charade of normalcy for the sake of a piece of card. But grief does not follow modern sensibilities. It follows its own logic. For John and Elizabeth, there will never be a living family portrait. There will never be another chance to line their children up by height. See how they cluster. Mark the way Mary's hand rests on Ellen's shoulder, or how Thomas's chin tilts like his father's. The photograph becomes, for them, not evidence of denial, but an attempt, clumsy, desperate, meticulously arranged, to hold, for a fraction of a second, the shape of what was lost. It is a ritual, as surely as laying flowers on a grave. Pritchard, in his own notes, seems shaken by the experience. He writes of the difficulty of the afternoon, of the unnatural labor of making so many small forms appear as if quickened. He notes that he accepted no payment beyond costs. The parents, he writes, desired chiefly to have one likeness in which all might be present. I confess I parted from them with a sense of having assisted at something which I cannot clearly approve, yet cannot in charity condemn. Victorian mourning culture is full of such uneasy acts. Locks of hair woven into brooches, children's shoes kept decades after any foot could fit them, cradles that are never dismantled, just quietly shoved into corners. The Harper photograph is an extreme, yes, 6 small bodies arranged as if they could pick up their lives as soon as the camera went back into its case. But it grows from the same soil. We, looking back, are disturbed because we see at once what the image denies. We know that none of these children has a future, that their bodies will be lowered into the ground within days. Their parents knew it too. They were there for the burials. The denial is not ignorance. It is a chosen temporary suspension of the literal in service of a different truth. This was our family. Once they all stood together around us. It is the same impulse that leads people today to keep profiles active for the dead on social media. to talk to voicemail recordings, to scroll through years of photographs, to feel, just for a moment, that the line of time may be bent. We operate on the comfort that our photographs are of the living. Incidents like the Harper portrait remind us that this is not always the case. Sometimes the most apparently ordinary image, a stiff Victorian family group in their Sunday best, conceals an unbearable fact that the children standing so straight, eyes looking almost but not quite at the lens, are already gone. Somewhere, perhaps in another anonymous box in another archive, there are more such images waiting to be recognized for what they are. Most will never be. They will remain to casualize just old pictures. But every so often, as with the Harpers, a ledger, a register, and a scan line up to reveal the truth, that what we thought was a beginning was in fact an end, posed to look like a pause. Thank you for joining us in this journey into one of the darkest corners of Victorian family life. If this story has changed the way you look at old photographs, if you find yourself wondering next time you see a sepia family group who in that frame might already have been past saving, consider subscribing to Veins of Darkness for more investigations into history's quietest horrors. Until the next macabre tale, stay curious about the darkness.